A texting mistake led a single mom to a billionaire's generosity in her time of need. Elena Smith didn't plan to text a billionaire for help. She only wanted her daughter to stop crying. Before we begin today's story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. It helps support the stories you love and ensures you never miss another thrilling tale. Now, let's begin. It was past 2 a.m., the kind of quiet, hollow hour when the city felt suspended in time. Elena sat on the worn carpet of her studio apartment, her back against the sagging couch, knees drawn up to her chest. The single lamp in the corner flickered, threatening to burn out completely. She didn't have money for a replacement bulb. She didn't have money for much of anything. Lily wailed from the second-hand crib across the room. 7 months old and hungry. Always hungry lately. Elena tried not to look at the nearly empty formula container on the kitchenette counter. Tonight's bottle had been more water than powder. The can was down to dust and desperation. Payday was Thursday, 4 days that might as well have been 4 years. She picked up her phone with trembling hands, thumb hovering over her sister's contact. Sarah had helped before, not easily, but she had. Each time came with a lecture Elena could recite from memory. Each time came with a look that said you should have thought about this before you had a baby alone. Elena didn't want to ask again. But tonight wasn't about pride. It was about a baby who couldn't understand why her stomach hurt. She typed, "Sarah, I'm so sorry to ask again. I need $75 for formula and groceries. Lily's almost out. I get paid Thursday. I'll pay you back, I promise." Her thumb trembled as she hit send. She didn't verify the number. She didn't even look at the name on the screen. She just set the phone down, dropped her forehead to her knees, and waited. 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "I believe you have the wrong number, but is your baby okay?" Elena blinked, sat up, grabbed the phone and stared in horror. One contact she'd saved incorrectly weeks ago. 1 digit off. She'd texted a complete stranger. Her stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry," she typed quickly. "Please ignore. Wrong number." She locked the screen, tossed the phone onto the couch cushion beside her, pulled her olive green shirt tighter around herself. Another failure added to the pile. Another moment of trying to keep it together and watching it all fall apart anyway. Lily's cries softened into exhausted whimpers. Elena closed her eyes and tried not to cry. 3 miles across the city, on the top floor of a penthouse that looked down on half of downtown, Randy Wilson stared at the message on his private phone. He never gave this number out. No business contacts, no press inquiries, no assistance. Only family. And that list had gotten shorter every year. The text wasn't spam. It wasn't a scam trying to steal his banking information. It was raw and real and desperate in a way that cut through every polished interaction he'd had in months. He read it again, slower this time, reading between the lines. "Lily's almost out. I get paid Thursday. I'll pay you back, I promise." It wasn't just a request. It was a mother negotiating with her own dignity, bargaining with a sister who'd probably helped before and resented it, promising repayment she might not be able to make. All for $75. Randy had spent more than that on a single glass of wine tonight at the charity gala. His tuxedo cost more than most people made in a month. The watch on his wrist could have fed that child for a year. You should just delete it, he thought. Not your problem. Not your responsibility. Most nights he would have. Tonight, standing alone in a penthouse filled with expensive things and empty spaces, still wearing the tuxedo that marked him as successful and isolated in equal measure, he didn't. Instead, he typed back, "Is your baby going to be okay?" He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Elena's phone buzzed again. She stared at the screen. Read the message twice. 3 times. What kind of stranger follows up like that? Her first instinct was to block the number. Delete the thread. Pretend this humiliation never happened. But something about the question, about how simply it was asked without judgment or pity, made her pause. "We'll manage," she wrote. "Sorry again for bothering you." The reply came almost immediately. "I can help. No strings." Elena scoffed aloud, a bitter sound in the silent apartment. She'd heard that before. From Lily's father, who'd promised to stay and left before the pregnancy test was even dry. From her former employer, who'd promised maternity leave protections and laid her off 2 weeks after she gave birth. From landlords and bill collectors and everyone else who'd ever offered help with conditions fine-printed into the margins. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers," she typed. Smart policy, came the response. "I'm Randy. Now I'm not a stranger." Despite everything, Elena felt the corner of her mouth twitch. Not quite a smile, but close. She didn't reply. Instead, she stood up, lifted Lily from the crib, and rocked her gently against her chest. She hummed a lullaby her own mother had sung, back when things were simpler and the world felt safer. Lily's breathing evened out. Her tiny fist curled against Elena's collarbone. Elena sat back down on the floor, her daughter sleeping against her heart, and cried quietly with the kind of grief that doesn't come from just being broke, but from being tired of being broke. Tired of failing. Tired of fighting battles she kept losing. Her phone stayed silent on the couch beside her. She didn't know that Randy Wilson was still awake 3 miles away, staring at their conversation, trying to remember the last time he'd felt moved to action by something other than a quarterly report. She didn't know that in 12 hours, her bank account would show a deposit that would change everything. She didn't know that her mistake wasn't a mistake at all. Not yet. Elena's phone buzzed. Her hands trembled as she opened the message, already bracing for rejection, maybe even mockery. Instead, the words on the screen made her blink twice. "I believe you have the wrong number, but is your baby okay?" She stared at those 7 words. No anger, no dismissal, just concern from a complete stranger who owed her nothing. Randy sat in his home office, looking at his phone with an expression his colleagues would never recognize. He kept this number completely private. Only a handful of people had it. The message had clearly been meant for someone else, probably sent in desperation to every contact in her phone. But something in those words had stopped him cold. There was no manipulation in them, no calculated plea. Just raw, unfiltered need from someone who had run out of options. He typed back, asking for details. When Elena explained about Lily's fever, the urgent care visit, the medication she couldn't afford, Randy's response was immediate. He wanted to help. Elena's pride flared up like a match in darkness. "I don't accept money from strangers," she typed, even as Lily whimpered in her arms. His reply came quickly, "Then I'm Randy. Now I'm not a stranger." Elena read those words 3 times. Something about them, the gentle humor, the refusal to let her drown in her own dignity, cracked something inside her. Lily needed that medication. Tonight, she swallowed hard and sent her payment app information, fingers shaking so badly she had to retype it twice. The notification came through moments later. Elena glanced at her phone, expecting to see $75. Instead, her screen showed $7,000. She gasped, nearly dropping Lily. Her first thought was that it was a mistake, a typo, an extra zero that would be reclaimed in minutes. She frantically typed, "You sent too much. You meant $75, not $7,000. Randy's response was calm. "No mistake. Buy the medicine. Pay your rent. Feed your daughter. The rest is yours." Elena's vision blurred. The tears came without permission, hot and fast, streaming down her face as Lily looked up at her with confused concern. These weren't just tears of relief, though relief was there. The crushing weight of immediate survival suddenly lifted. These were tears for something larger, something she'd almost forgotten existed. The possibility that the world contained people who would catch you when you fell, who would see your need and meet it without question or condition. For years, the world had shown her only its hard edges. And now this stranger named Randy had reminded her that kindness, real kindness, still existed somewhere in the darkness. Elena didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Lily finally dozed off after the fever medicine kicked in. Her small body relaxed against Elena's chest, but Elena's mind spun in endless circles. $7,000. From a stranger. From Randy. She corrected herself, remembering his words. The money sat in her account like something too fragile to touch, too good to be real. Part of her kept expecting it to vanish, to be revealed as some cruel technical error. Around 3 a.m., another message came through. She grabbed her phone, heart hammering. "I know you're probably wondering why," Randy had written. "Someone once helped me when I had nothing. I've never forgotten that lesson. Sleep well, Elena. You and Lily are safe now." She read it until the words blurred. Someone had helped him once. This man who could send $7,000 without blinking had known what it felt like to have nothing. The thought settled something in her chest, made the kindness feel less impossible. Morning light was just breaking when Elena heard a sound at her door. Not a knock, something heavier. She peered through the peephole and saw boxes. Multiple boxes, stacked carefully on her doorstep. Her heart lurched as she opened the door and began bringing them inside. Formula. Cases of it. Diapers in Lily's size. Baby clothes with the tags still on. Soft and new and nothing like the worn secondhand things Elena had been rotating through. Groceries, real groceries, not just ramen and canned soup. And a crib, disassembled but clearly high quality. The kind she'd seen in stores and walked past without even checking the price. The handwritten note was tucked into the top box, his handwriting clean and precise. "Every child deserves to feel secure. R.W. Randy W. something." Her fingers were already moving across her phone screen before she consciously decided to search. Randy Wilson. The results loaded and Elena's breath caught. CEO of Wilson Tech Innovations. Net worth, $9.3 billion. The number seemed obscene, incomprehensible. She scrolled through articles. Technology magazines called him a visionary in AI-driven financial systems. Forbes profiled his company's revolutionary algorithms. Tabloids mentioned a recent divorce from some socialite whose jewelry probably cost more than Elena's entire apartment building. Photo after photo showed a man who avoided cameras, who valued privacy to the point of reclusiveness, whose rare public appearances were carefully controlled. $9 billion. And he'd spent part of his night buying formula and diapers for a stranger's baby, writing a note by hand, making sure Lily would feel secure. Elena looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her arms, then back at the boxes filling her tiny apartment. Nothing about this made sense. Nothing about Randy Wilson's attention to her situation, her specific, small, unremarkable situation, aligned with the man described in these articles. But the boxes were real. The money was real. And somehow, impossibly, his kindness was real too. Elena stared at her phone for 20 minutes before she finally typed the message. Her thumb hovered over the send button, then pulled back, then hovered again. The question felt too direct, maybe even ungrateful. But it burned in her mind, refusing to be ignored. Why would you do this for a complete stranger? She hit send before she could stop herself again. The reply came faster than she expected, as if Randy had been waiting for the question. "Because I know what it feels like to have everything and still lose what matters most. And because no child should suffer while I have the means to help." Elena read the words 3 times. There was something beneath them, some wound he wasn't naming. A billionaire who'd lost what mattered most. She thought about the divorce mentioned in those articles, wondered what else might be hidden behind his fortress of privacy. Another message appeared. "Tell me about yourself, Elena. Who were you before all this?" The question surprised her. Who was she before? Before Lily, before Marcus left, before survival became her only identity. Her fingers moved slowly across the screen, typing out pieces of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. Finance degree from a state school she'd worked 3 jobs to afford. Junior analyst position at a mid-sized investment firm. She'd been good at it too, seeing patterns in data that others missed, until the company downsized 3 months into her maternity leave. Eliminated her position while she was home with a colicky newborn and a boyfriend who'd already started eyeing the door. "You worked in finance?" Randy's response came with what she imagined was surprise. "What was your focus?" They messaged back and forth, and Elena felt something unfamiliar awakening inside her. The part of her brain that had once analyzed market trends and risk assessments, that had found beauty in spreadsheets and forecasting models. The part she'd packed away when keeping Lily fed became her only job description. Then Randy's message shifted everything. "Come to Wilson Tech. Just a conversation, nothing more." No obligations, no strings. I'd like to meet the woman who raises her daughter with such fierce determination. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Wilson Tech. The building she'd seen in those search results, all glass and steel and success. A conversation with a man worth billions. A man whose company revolutionized financial systems while she'd been serving coffee and scraping together rent. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something that remembered what it felt like to be more than just tired, more than just surviving. Something that whispered maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to reclaim not just her life, but herself. She took a breath and typed, "When?" The Wilson Tech Tower pierced the skyline like a statement of intent. All glass and steel and unmistakable success. Elena stood on the sidewalk outside, Lily strapped to her chest in the carrier, and felt the full weight of her thrift store blazer and outdated briefcase. The building's reflection showed her exactly what she was. A woman who didn't belong here, playing dress-up in a world that had moved on without her. But she'd come this far. She pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby alone probably cost more than every apartment she'd ever lived in combined. Marble floors caught the light from installations that looked like frozen waterfalls. Elena gave her name at the reception desk, half expecting to be turned away, told there'd been some mistake. Instead, the elevator came quickly, and within moments she was being greeted on the executive floor by Claire Martinez, Randy's assistant. Claire's smile was genuine, her handshake warm, and she cooed at Lily with the ease of someone who actually liked children rather than someone paid to pretend. "Randy thought you might want to see something first," Claire said, leading Elena down a corridor lined with art that probably had its own insurance policies. She opened a door, and Elena stopped breathing. The childcare facility was bigger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light. Age-appropriate toys organized by developmental stage. Soft reading nooks. A separate nap room with cribs that made the one Randy had sent look budget. And staff, actual certified professionals with kind faces and credentials displayed on the wall. "Every executive has access," Claire explained. "Randy insisted on it when he built the company. Said no one should have to choose between their children's well-being and their career." Elena's throat tightened. She clutched Lily a little closer. The conference room was smaller than she'd expected, more intimate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but the furniture was comfortable rather than intimidating. And then Randy walked in, and Elena understood immediately why cameras made him uncomfortable. In person, he was more striking than any photograph suggested. Tailored suit that spoke of wealth without screaming it, silver at his temples, eyes that assessed without judgment. Power radiated from him naturally, but there was something else too. A gentleness in how he moved, how he smiled at Lily first before greeting Elena. "Thank you for coming," he said, as if she'd done him the favor. They sat. Randy was direct. "I don't believe in charity, Elena. I believe in recognizing talent that circumstances have hidden. This is an investment in potential." He slid a folder across the table. 6-month contract. Financial analyst position. The salary made her dizzy. More than she'd made before, more than she'd dreamed of making now. Flexible hours, full benefits, and access to that sunlit childcare facility where Lily could be safe, stimulated, cared for while Elena worked. "I'll prove myself," Elena said, the words coming fierce and immediate. "I'll earn this." Randy's smile was knowing. "I don't doubt it for a second." She signed before she could think too hard about whether she deserved this, whether it was real. The pen felt heavy in her hand, like she was signing more than just a contract. She was signing her way back to herself. The first week felt like learning to breathe again. Elena would drop Lily at the childcare facility each morning, watching through the observation window as the staff, Marie, especially, welcomed her daughter with genuine warmth. Then she'd take the elevator up to her office, a real office with a door and a window and a computer that didn't freeze every 10 minutes, and she'd lose herself in numbers. God, she'd missed this. The way data told stories if you knew how to listen. The satisfaction of finding patterns, building models, watching complexity resolve into clarity. Her mind, dormant for so long under the weight of survival, roared back to life. By week 3, she'd found her rhythm. The other analysts treated her with polite distance. The new hire who'd somehow bypassed the usual recruitment process, but Elena didn't need their friendship. She needed the work, and the work was everywhere. She was reviewing quarterly international transaction reports when she saw it. A flicker of something wrong, like a note played slightly off-key in an otherwise perfect symphony. Small amounts moving through subsidiary accounts. $47,000 here, $63,000 there. Individually meaningless in a company that dealt in billions. But the timing was too regular. Every 17 days like clockwork. And the amounts, while varying, always fell just below the threshold that would trigger automated compliance alerts. Elena pulled up 6 months of records. The pattern held. 12 months. Still there. 18 months. Consistent as a heartbeat. Too regular to be random. Too small to be noticed. Too consistent to be legitimate. Her hands had gone cold. She was staring at the shape of something deliberate, something designed to hide in plain sight. Embezzlement, probably, or money laundering, something that someone with access and knowledge had carefully constructed. Her phone buzzed with a message from Randy. If you notice anything irregular, report it only to me. Trust no one else in the organization. Elena stared at the words. The message had come unprompted, as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. As if he'd known what she'd find. She looked around her office. This opportunity that had seemed too good to be true. This job that had fallen into her lap after a desperate text to the wrong number. Randy's words from their first meeting echoed back. I believe in recognizing talent that circumstances have hidden. But maybe it wasn't just about recognizing talent. Maybe it was about needing someone with talent who had no loyalty to the existing power structure, no alliances with people who'd been here for years, no reason to protect anyone but the truth. He'd brought her in as an outsider, deliberately, because he suspected someone inside his own company was stealing from him, and he needed eyes he could trust. Elena's fingers moved across her keyboard, compiling everything she'd found. She hit send on the encrypted message to Randy, then sat back in her chair. She'd wanted a chance to prove herself. It looked like she'd just gotten one. Elena stopped sleeping properly again, but this time it wasn't from desperation. It was from the hunt. Every night after putting Lily down, she'd open her laptop and dive back into the labyrinth of data, following threads that grew more complex and more damning with each hour. The transactions weren't just regular. They were artful. Money flowed out through Wilson Tech's international divisions, the Singapore office, the London subsidiary, the Dublin tech hub, each transfer carefully structured to look legitimate. Vendor payments, consulting fees, technology licensing agreements, the kind of routine expenses that happen hundreds of times daily in a company this size. But these payments went to shell corporations. Elena traced them through layers of corporate structures, a Dublin limited company that fed into a Cayman Islands holding company that connected to a Delaware LLC. The money moved through jurisdictions like water finding cracks in stone, each hop making it harder to follow, until finally it disappeared into accounts she couldn't access. Untraceable. Gone. The sophistication was breathtaking. Whoever designed this understood international finance at an expert level, knew exactly which regulatory gaps to exploit, which thresholds to stay beneath. And then Elena found the approval patterns. Every phantom transaction, buried in thousands of legitimate ones, carried the same digital signature in the authorization chain. Not obvious, the system showed multiple approvers, different department heads, proper hierarchical sign-offs. But when Elena dug into the metadata, the timestamps, the IP addresses, she found the truth. One person had touched every single fraudulent transaction at some point in its approval process. Marcus Steele, Chief Operating Officer. Her hands shook as she compiled the evidence. Transaction records, authorization logs, network data showing his digital fingerprints on every theft. Patterns proving this wasn't opportunistic. It was systematic, sophisticated, and ongoing. She encrypted everything and sent it to Randy at 2 a.m. His response came in minutes. My office, 7 a.m., before anyone else arrives. Randy looked like he hadn't slept either. He closed his office door behind her and gestured to the conference table where she'd spread out her findings on his secure tablet. "I've been watching Marcus for 8 months," Randy said quietly. Suspected something was wrong, but couldn't pin it down. The patterns were too subtle, too well hidden. He looked at her charts, her analysis, and something like relief crossed his face. "This is what I needed." "Who is he?" Elena asked. "Brilliant. Ruthless. I hired him 2 years ago. Credentials were impeccable, references glowing. Within 6 months, he'd consolidated power by installing his own people throughout the organization. Directors, department heads, even some board relationships." Randy's jaw tightened. "He's too smart to leave obvious evidence." "What you found is extraordinary work, Elena, but it's not enough yet." "Not enough?" "This proves. It proves someone with his access committed fraud. His lawyers will argue the digital trails could be fabricated, that others had the same access, that the evidence is circumstantial." Randy met her eyes. "We need something irrefutable. Something he can't explain away." Elena looked at the data spread before them, months of her work, proof that should be damning. "Then we keep digging," she said. The message appeared on Elena's personal phone at 11:47 p.m. from a number that showed only as unknown. "Stop asking questions about international accounts. This is your only warning." Elena's blood went cold. Her personal phone. Not her work device, not her company email. Someone knew where to find her outside the office, knew what she was investigating, knew enough to be threatened by it. She screenshot the message and forwarded it to Randy immediately, then sat in her small apartment, the one she'd been so grateful for just weeks ago, and felt the walls press in. Lily slept peacefully in her crib, and Elena thought about locked doors that weren't really locked, about how easy it would be for someone with resources to get to them. Randy called within minutes. "Pack a bag. Security is on the way." "Randy, I can't just—" "Elena." His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. "This isn't a request. Someone threatened you. They know where you live. You and Lily are moving to a company apartment tonight. 24-hour security. Monitored access. Safe." The security team arrived in 15 minutes. Professional, efficient, helping her pack essentials while maintaining watch positions. By 1 a.m., Elena and Lily were installed in a furnished apartment that made her previous place look like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows with bulletproof glass. Panic buttons in every room. 2 armed guards in the hallway. The next morning, Randy brought someone new to their strategy sessions. Agent Sarah Torres, FBI, Financial Crimes Division. Torres had the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen every version of human greed and was impressed by none of it. "Your evidence is solid," Torres said, reviewing Elena's analysis. "Meets our threshold for a formal investigation. But here's the problem, what you found is the tip. Marcus is moving, what, 3 to 4 million a year through these channels." "For point 2, Elena confirmed. "Right, that's his operating budget. But nobody builds a network this sophisticated for pocket change. There's more. Bigger transfers, bigger accounts, something he's building toward." Torres leaned forward. "We need to see the full operation." Randy and Torres exchanged a look, some wordless communication passing between them. Then Randy turned to Elena. "We want to set a trap. You'll create fabricated transaction records in the system. Make it look like there's a major transfer coming through next week. 20 million, properly structured to look legitimate but following the patterns you've identified. The kind of opportunity Marcus won't be able to resist." "You want to bait him," Elena said slowly. "We want him to reveal his full infrastructure," Torres corrected. "The real accounts, the actual money trail, everything he's been hiding." She paused. "But Elena, if he's watching you, and that message suggests he is, this puts you directly in his crosshairs." Elena looked at Lily, sleeping in her carrier in the corner of the conference room. Thought about the life Randy had given them, the safety that was already being threatened. Thought about Marcus stealing millions while people like her scraped by on nothing. "Tell me what you need me to do," she said. The boardroom door opened before Marcus could savor his victory. Elena walked in carrying 2 encrypted tablets. Agent Torres beside her with the calm authority of someone who'd done this 100 times before. 3 more federal agents followed, positioning themselves at strategic points around the room. Elena met Randy's eyes briefly, the smallest acknowledgement passing between them, then turned to face Marcus. "Not quite finished," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "But you are." She activated the first tablet, and the wall-mounted display came to life with her analysis. Not the preliminary findings Randy had shown earlier. Everything. 18 months of systematic theft. Elena began, walking the board through the data with the same precision she'd once used in analyst presentations that felt like a lifetime ago. $4.2 million routed through shell corporations in 7 jurisdictions. Every transaction carefully structured to evade automated detection. She pulled up transaction logs, each one highlighted with authorization metadata. "This is your digital signature, Mr. Steele. Every fraudulent transfer. The IP addresses traced to your devices, your office, your home system." Marcus's composure cracked slightly. "That could be fabricated." "Could be," Torres interrupted. "Except we also have your communications." She nodded to Elena, who pulled up encrypted messages recovered from servers Marcus thought were secure. Coordination with Shell Corporation contacts. Instructions for fund transfers. Calculations of how much he could extract without triggering alerts. "And this morning," Elena continued, pulling up the final piece, "you authorized a $20 million transfer following the exact patterns I've documented. A transaction that doesn't exist, that we created specifically to see if you'd take the bait." The tablet showed Marcus's authorization, timestamped at 6:47 a.m. His digital signature, his access credentials, irrefutable. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Agent Torres stepped forward, credentials in hand. "Marcus Steele, you're under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and corporate embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." 2 agents moved to either side of Marcus, professionally restraining him even as he tried to maintain some shred of dignity. But as they prepared to lead him out, he turned to Elena, and his mask shattered completely. "You think this changes anything?" The sneer was ugly, desperate. "You'll always be what you were, desperate and disposable. A broke single mother who got lucky. That's all you are." The words were designed to cut, to reduce her back to that woman who'd sent a desperate text to the wrong number, who'd measured her worth in how many shifts she could work without collapsing. Elena met his gaze steadily, and when she spoke, her voice carried no anger, only certainty. "No, I'm what I've always been. Someone who sees the truth you tried to hide." She watched as they led him away, his expensive suit and careful composure meaning nothing now. The boardroom sat in stunned silence, board members staring at the evidence still displayed on the screens. Randy stood, and when he looked at Elena, there was something like pride in his expression. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the board, "I'd like to formally introduce Elena Cross, our new Director of Financial Compliance." 3 weeks later, Elena stood at the head of the boardroom table, the same table where Marcus had tried to destroy Randy, where she'd exposed the truth that saved the company. But this time, she owned the space. Director of Financial Oversight. Her title, her authority, earned. "The new transparency protocols will require quarterly independent audits of all international transactions," she explained, walking the board through restructured oversight systems designed to ensure what Marcus had done could never happen again. Every subsidiary, every account, full documentation trails. The board members, the same ones who'd nodded along with Marcus's explanations, listened intently now, asking intelligent questions, treating her analysis with the respect it deserved. Not because Randy had handed her the position, but because she'd proven herself when it mattered most. She wasn't Randy's charity case anymore. She was the analyst who'd saved Wilson Tech. That evening, Elena picked up Lily from the childcare facility and headed home, not to the secure company apartment, but to the beautiful 2-bedroom place she'd chosen herself in a neighborhood with good schools and a park nearby, paid for by her own salary, her name on the lease, her life rebuilt on foundations that couldn't be taken away. The doorbell rang just as she'd gotten Lily settled with dinner. Elena opened it to find Randy, slightly nervous in a way she'd never seen before, holding a small wrapped package. "I wanted to give you something," he said. Inside was a frame and behind the glass, a screenshot of her original text message. "I know this is last minute, but could you please lend me $75? Lily has a fever and needs medicine. I'll pay you back on Friday, I promise." "The mistake that changed everything," Randy said softly. Elena looked at those desperate words, remembered the woman who'd typed them with shaking hands and no hope left. Then she looked at who she'd become, not just professionally, but the version of herself she'd thought was lost forever. "Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all," she said. Randy took a breath, and she recognized the expression. Someone preparing to risk something that mattered. "Elena, I want you and Lily in my life, not as my employee, as someone I care about deeply." He paused. "If you're ready." Elena looked at Lily, happily destroying a bowl of macaroni, then back at Randy, this man who'd seen her at her lowest and somehow recognized what she could become, who'd given her not rescue, but opportunity, who'd trusted her with his company and now wanted to trust her with more. "Ask me that again tomorrow," she said, smiling. "In person. Over dinner." Randy's face transformed with hope and relief. "That's a yes." Elena laughed, the sound free and genuine. "That's a let's find out. I'm done making decisions in the middle of the night on an empty stomach." Randy grinned, and Elena saw not the billionaire CEO, but the man who'd responded to a desperate stranger's text with simple kindness. The man who remembered what it felt like to have nothing. The man who'd written every child deserves to feel secure in his own handwriting. "Tomorrow then," he said. "Tomorrow," Elena agreed. She closed the door and leaned against it, listening to Lily's happy babbling. This wasn't a fairy tale ending where everything was perfect and certain. But it was real, built on mutual respect, shared values, and the courage to trust again. It was a beginning, and this time, Elena was choosing it with her eyes wide open. Thank you for watching till the end. If the story kept you hooked, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. More thrilling and unforgettable stories are coming, so stay tuned. Until next time,